Does your radio station website homepage do a great job of making visitors do what you want them to do? Are you collecting email addresses to connect with them on a closer level ongoing either throughout the week or throughout the month? Well, we'll be talking about these subjects and a whole lot more with our digital dot connecting guest right after this.
You're listening to Better Radio Websites, the definitive podcast for radio professionals who want their websites to generate more traffic and substantial revenue. Get time-tested techniques, secret tricks, and valuable tools in online content, marketing, analytics, security, social media, and much more. Ready for your radio station to dominate digital in your market? Here we go.
Hi, it's Jim, and welcome to Better Radio Websites, the podcast that wants to help you get more visitors and the most revenue from your radio station website. And if you haven't tuned into our video version of this podcast, be sure that you do so either on Spotify or on YouTube. We upload to both of those services each and every week. Of course, you can still get the audio version of this podcast, but if you hear us mention something like "you look like this" or "you shouldn't have worn that" or something like that, that's what we're referring to. We're referring to the video version of the podcast. So be sure to check it out. Today, I'm very, very excited to have Seth Resler on the program today. He's somebody that I follow on a regular basis, and if you do not, be sure that you do. Seth is a 25-year broadcasting veteran. He's been on the mic, and he's programmed radio stations in major markets like New York City, Boston, Seattle. He was in the Bay Area right around the time that I was out there. And after he's done that, he crossed over into online marketing, an interesting story that we'll hear from Seth about. And now, as digital strategist for Jacobs Media, Seth works with radio stations all over the country, helping them design, implement action plans for basically everything online. Websites, social media, email marketing, podcasts, search engine optimization, content marketing, everything. He connects all of those dots, and that's why they call him the Digital Dot Connector. Welcome to Better Radio Websites, Seth Resler.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's so great to have you on because I follow your blog. I have it to where I get it automatically in my feed or whatever. So whenever something pops up, I'm like, okay, I got to share this because this is amazing. And I wish I'd have thought about it first. You're on the Jacobs Media blog, and the folks out there, if you're listening and watching this and you're not following this, you do need to be following Seth because. Amazing insight when it comes to your radio station website. Seth, how long have you been doing the website stuff?
My career is that I started in radio. I was an alternative rock guy, and I was one of these guys, like so many radio people. I moved every couple of years to a new city. And we all know you either stick to one city and switch formats as you go from station to station, or you stick to one format and you move from city to city. And I stuck to one format, moved from city to so. Started in Providence, went to St. Louis, went to Boston, went to Seattle, went back to Providence, was doing some work on K-Rock in New York, did some work at Mix 106.5 in Silicon Valley for a while. But I left radio also and went and worked in digital marketing for a while, and that's where I picked up a lot of this. And I'll never forget there was a moment where a friend of mine, Jason Jackson, had just become program director of Live 105, which is the alternative station that I grew up listening to. And I was in the Bay Area at the time, and we went and had lunch, and we're walking around the Stanford campus, and Jason says to me, I need a new morning show. And I said, well, if I were looking for a morning show, here's what I do. And it wasn't, I'd interview these guys, or I do this stunt, or I do this bit. It was, here's what I would do with the email database, and here's what I do on the website, and here's what I do as a podcast, and here's what I'd be sharing on social media. And Jason turns to me and he goes, nobody in radio knows what you're talking about, right? I was like, oh, I didn't really realize that because at that time I'd been immersed for several years in digital marketing. And so that was probably about 8.5 years ago at this point. And Jason told me that I should call up Joel Denver over at All Access, and so I did. And I said, Joel, can I start writing a column for you? And he said, sure. And it was digital tips. And the idea is basically that I'm a translator. I speak radio and I speak internet so I can talk about SEO to somebody who's used to talking about TSL. And that's really what I try and do, is I try and take these digital concepts and put them into practice in a way that is going to work for radio stations and make sense. It isn't this kind of high-level theoretical stuff, but is, here's what I should do next time I run a contest on my radio station. So I wrote that blog for about a year, and then I said to Joel, hey, can I come down and you know, you who hosted, it was called the Worldwide Radio Summit at the time. Now it's the All Access Audio Summit. And I said, can I just come down and interview a bunch of your speakers and we'll put it out as a podcast? I'm not 100% sure that Joel knew what a podcast was at the time, but he was like, sure, come on down. You know, he's very, very enthusiastic. So I came on down and interviewed Bubba the Love Sponge and Jeff Smullian and all sorts of folks. And one of them was Fred Jacobs at Jacobs Media. And we had a great conversation. And a couple of weeks later, Fred called me and said, hey, do you want to join the team and be our digital strategist and help, you know, radio clients with their digital their digital strategies. And so that's how I joined Jacobs Media. I like to tell everybody that I interviewed him and got the job,
right?
Not the other way around. And that was about 7.5 years ago that I joined Jacobs Media, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. How many websites do you have you kind of consulted on since you've been there?
Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea. And look, it's not always websites, right? I mean, sometimes it's a podcast project. Sometimes I come in for a social media audit. Sometimes, I have clients that we're working on getting email marketing up and off the ground. So it really depends. I tend to be, the way I describe it is I'm a mile wide and an inch deep. Like it's often a lot of different things. It's not any one thing. I like websites. There was a period back when I was a program director when I had a side project and I needed to build a website for it. And I spent way too much money to some people overseas to try and build a website that never turned out the way I wanted it to. And it was a complete waste. And I was really frustrated. And so I went and taught myself WordPress, which made it really, really easy. And I am not a coder. I cannot code at all. But the tools are out there these days that you can build a website pretty easily. And so I'm self-taught. I taught myself a lot of that stuff. At one point, somebody I worked with handed me a book by a guy named Steve Krug called Don't Make Me Think, which is about website design. And then I read his other book, which is called Rocket Surgery Made Easy, which is about how to test websites. And so I taught myself to test websites. And these are great books. I highly recommend them to everybody. They are, short with big fonts and lots of pictures. So they're exactly the types of books that I like. But they were incredibly valuable for learning how to do this type of stuff. So that was where I learned it. And then I literally started doing it to my own websites. I started testing my own websites. I started, and it was very valuable. And so when I joined Jacobs Media, this was something we started doing for other radio stations, was running what we call a usability test for websites. And what a usability test is, it's not a down to the decimal point perfect science research. It's kind of that, oh my gosh, I can't believe we didn't think of that type of test. Sure. So what you do, we used to do them in person. During the pandemic, we started doing them over Zoom. I prefer them in person, but you can do them either way. And we get 3 people. I like 3 people who are not familiar with the radio station because I don't want them bringing any information that they've heard over the air to it.
That's right. No fans or anything like that.
Right. I want them to just react to the website. Mm-hmm. If the everyday person off the street can figure out the website, I have no concerns that the fans will be able to. And we bring them in one at a time. We spend about an hour with them. We pay them a small amount of money for their time. And we pull up the website and we ask them some basic questions. And we ask them to think out loud and respond to those questions and see what they do. And what we're looking for is the things that they have trouble doing, right? And if one person has trouble doing it, it might be the person, it might be the website. If 2 people have trouble doing it, it's the website. And so you got to make a change, and so you fix things. But yeah, the first thing we'll do, we'll always pull up the website and we'll say, what does this organization do? And I've seen a lot of radio station websites not perform on that question. I remember one test, we had somebody look at a radio station website for about 10 minutes before they figured out it was a radio station.
What did they think it was?
They thought it was a celebrity news site. Right?
Ah.
Because and look, if it just says 108.3 WKRP FM, okay, they're going to figure it out. But if it's the Mountain, or the Hawk or whatever, right? Like it could be anything. So part of it is those visual clues that they did not know. And it took a lot of time for them to figure out that it was, and part of it is because a lot of radio stations try and put everything on their homepage. They just I wrote a blog post a couple years ago called "Your Radio Station's Homepage Has Too Much Crap on It." It's true. There are so many radio station websites that try and shove everything on that homepage, and not everything needs to be there. So that's the first question we always ask when we do this. Hopefully they sit there and go, "Oh, it's a radio station," and then we'll ask, "Okay, if you tuned into this radio station, what would you expect to hear?" And sometimes there's a great answer to that. Sometimes there's not. Maybe they say rock music, and we say, well, okay, what type of rock music? Is it Led Zeppelin or is it Five Finger Death Punch? Because those are very different.
Right.
And what too many radio station websites do is they have that slider, on the homepage.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which is I hate the slider. It makes sense if you are a news station, which is putting the top news stories through there. That's where that makes sense. I don't think it makes sense for any other radio station.
Well, studies have shown that they just don't convert. They don't move people around the website.
Right. And what the slideshow does is it solves fights in the building, right? So, it's the music director wants the baby band that's playing the 100-seat club this weekend. The promo director wants the appearance that's happening at the car dealership. The salesperson needs to go make Dunkin' Donuts happy. And so you're like Oprah Winfrey, and you're just like, you get a slide, and you get a slide, and you get a slide, and everybody's happy.
Right.
Except the listeners who can't figure out what they're looking at, right? Sure. I think you need to treat your homepage much like a billboard, where people just glance at it and they instantly know, oh, okay, this station plays Pink and, Wilson Phillips and, I don't know, Don Henley, whatever it is. Sure. So that's the next thing we'll ask is, what would you expect to hear? And then we'll ask, where is this radio station? And you'd be amazed because 95% of radio station websites fail this question. Huh. And it's because when we're on the air, we don't have to say where we are because everybody who's listening is in the same place. It's not true on the web, right? So on the web, you could come from, and trust me, I look at a lot of radio station websites, and you'd be surprised how often I'm sitting there going, where is this station that I'm looking at? I can't figure it out, and people don't know. So, I think that's a really important thing to put up there, because hopefully what you want to hear people say is, this is a radio station. They are in Los Angeles. They play alternative rock music like The Killers and Linkin Park and Sublime and Red Hot Chili Peppers. And, that's the answer you're looking for in half a second. But it's, a lot of radio stations don't get that reaction. So.
That's true. That's true. So what are some of the other things whenever, outside of the usability test, whenever somebody, comes to you and says, we're just not getting any results from our website or not any traffic from it. And, how can you help us? What do you look for?
Yeah. So having done a lot of these usability tests, there's some things that I can figure out without having to do another one because I've just heard it enough times. And like I said, a lot of radio station websites just put too much on the homepage and it isn't clear what's there. The first question I talk to people or I ask people when we talk about their websites is, when people come to your website, what do you want them to do? And you'd be shocked how many people don't have an answer to that. Like they've never thought about that. And I'll get some sort of answer like, well, we want them to engage and read and hang out. And these are all euphemisms for I really don't know, right? Like, I haven't really thought about it before.
That's true.
What I'm looking for are very specific, very concrete actions that people can take that you can measure. And here's what I think the answer should be for a lot of radio. Number one, we want them to stream the station. Right. And all of these, we call these goals, right? What we want them to do. And the goals ultimately should be directly tied to the bottom line, Like, you should know how, when somebody takes this action, it ultimately, brings more money into the radio system. So number one, stream. And we all know that the more people listen, the more we can charge for ads, so we make money off that. Number two, we want them to sign up for the email database, right? That's really important because then we can get them out to promo appearances, or we can sell tickets to our concerts, or we can get them to do any of the things that we want to do. So we want to capture their information.
Yeah, I see some radio stations getting email addresses, but then they have over years now not doing anything with them.
So put a pin in that. Let's come back to that.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's true. Okay. We'll talk about email in a moment. But that's it. Number three, maybe we want them to we want them to enter a contest, because that's really just another way of capturing their email address. And there could be other things in there that you want them to do. Maybe you want them to download your mobile app, because that's how they can, again, continue to listen to the station, and you can send push notifications to them and things like that. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think a lot of people miss, that should be one of the biggest goals of your radio station's website, is we want them to fill out a form that says, hey, I'm interested in advertising. Can you let me know? And granted, not a lot of people are going to fill out the form, but the ones who are worth a lot of money. So that's really, really important. Way too many radio station websites do not pay enough attention to that advertise with us page. And I'd argue that that's probably the most valuable page on the site.
Sure.
So that, and those are some of the things, and there may be other goals, but not all actions are equally important. It's great if somebody follows you on social media, but I don't think it's one of the most important things at all. And in fact, the last thing I want to do, if somebody's come to my website, the last thing I want to do is then go send them somewhere else. Right. Don't get me wrong. Mark Zuckerberg loves it. It's valuable for him, but I don't feel like I need to help him out at this point.
Yeah. If they leave your website, they're going to stay on Facebook because they'll get sucked in.
And then they can't take some of those other actions. So, one of the things I really don't like is radio station websites that have those widgets that, kind of in the sidebar on the bottom right, that are like, oh, here's what we're doing on Facebook, and here's what and don't get me wrong, you can put links to your social media there, but I don't think you need to be given prime real estate to your Facebook posts. Sure. The way I describe it is social media is a lot like, putting a billboard by the highway. Right? Why do you want to be on social media? Because everybody else is on social media. Like, why do you want to have a billboard by the highway? Because everybody's on the highway. You want them to see you. The whole point is you want people to see that billboard and then tune into your radio station, right? The point is not to have people tune into your radio station and you send them to the billboard, right? You're not sitting there running 50 promos a day going, hey, check out our billboard on I-95, right? This defeats the purpose.
Right.
And yet I see so many people do that with social media. Where they're sending people from the website to social media, or even from their airwaves to social media. Send people to your website, because that's where they can take these actions, they can accomplish these goals that ultimately are going to affect the bottom line of the radio station. So,
yeah. All right. Can we go back to the email?
Oh, yeah. So email. So look, I think email marketing is not sexy, because it's been around for a long time, and it's much sexier to talk about Clubhouse or TikTok or podcasts or, Twitch or whatever. But email, and really email and websites are the workhorses. I spent more time during the pandemic talking to stations about email marketing 101 than anything else, because there were a lot of them that didn't have it in place, or didn't have a solid foundation. And all of a sudden, when these listeners weren't in their cars anymore because they were working from home, they had no way of getting to those listeners. It's still a hugely important mechanism for connecting with your listeners. And I think it's something that you need to do. So that's one of the things I look for when I look at a radio station's website is, are they trying to capture my email address? Mm-hmm. And I think, like you said, it's not enough to just capture the email address and then send out an email once a year when you got tickets to your holiday Christmas concert on sale, or you're running a pledge drive. Like, you've got to be in constant contact. Oh, that'd be a good name for an email service. But you need to be constantly contacting your listeners through email and getting them in the habit of opening that email, so that when you do have something really important that you need to send them, that you need to sell tickets or make money or do whatever, that they're opening it.
We see some stations, especially news websites with their news stations. What they'll do is they'll have a newsletter, and their listener base can sign up for one of two newsletters. They can sign up one for just promotional stuff that they get maybe once a month or once a quarter or something like that. But then they can sign up for a daily email, and it gets their latest blog post every morning or every afternoon, or twice a day in some cases.
And there is no excuse for a news station anywhere in America to not have a daily email blast at this point. News is the easiest place to do it. Like it's harder if you're, a top 40 station where your staff is all stretched too thin, and then you got to go ask them to write a blog post, and that's not something that they were trained to do. But for news, right, absolutely, you need it, and it should be exactly what you're saying. And we do the same thing at Jacobs Media, right? So one of the big things I believe when it comes to email is spend your time writing content for the website, not emails. And that's because we're all spread too thin. Look, it'd be great if we all had enough staff and enough time to sit down and, craft each email individually, but most of us don't. So I like to automate that. I like to use a feature called RSS to email. You can find it in some email service providers, not others. I know that, for example, MailChimp has it. I know that Constant Contact doesn't. So look for that feature. But here at Jacobs Media, every day, Fred Jacobs writes a blog post. I have no idea how he does it, but he
I know. Goodness.
He pumps it out every day,
and long ones too.
And high quality. I mean, good stuff. And he puts it out every day, and every morning at 7 a.m. we send out an email blast, and we never write that email. So we use MailChimp. What MailChimp does is MailChimp checks the RSS feed for our blog post. If you have a WordPress website, you already have RSS feeds built into your website. You may have that on other platforms as well. And it checks that RSS feed, and if it sees a new blog post in the pipe, it pulls an excerpt, drops it in an email template, and fires it off. So we send an email out every morning, and about 15%-ish of our web traffic comes from that email blast, and we don't lift a finger for it.
Yeah, that is substantial.
Yeah. Now, when people sign up, we also ask them, hey, do exactly what you said, which is that they can sign up for the daily email. We also let them sign up for a weekly option if they don't want to get the email every day. So, for example, if you were in the podcasting space but not in the radio space, we talk about podcasting but not as often. So maybe you just once a week want to check in on what we're saying. Or we give people the option of just signing up for big announcements, like webinars when we release our tech survey or things like that. And so I think that's one of the things that's really key is ask people, let people know what you're going to send them and how often you're going to send them, and give them some options there. For a radio station, it might be, hey, do you want recaps of the morning show? Do you want the list of concerts every week? Do you want the contests every week? Do you want the community affairs program? Do you want the playlist for the local music show? Do you want, whatever it is? And ideally you can set up, and with WordPress and MailChimp, it works. There are probably other ways to do it with other software configurations where you can categorize the posts and have a different automated email campaign for each category of posts, so you can deliver to people just what they want. Right. But tell them, hey, Wednesday mornings at 10, we're going to email you the concert list, or every morning at 11:15, we're going to email you the recap of that morning show. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What other calls to action do you think would be good for radio station websites? I mean, signing up for the newsletter, streaming the station, contests. What else is there?
Yeah, like I mentioned, the Advertise With Us page. So one of the secrets about calls to action is they're not so much about adding things to the website as they are about taking things away from the website. So when you've got those calls to action, too often radio station websites are crowded with a bunch of other stuff. Let's put the weather and the DJ's bio and a list of now playing songs or whatever. And let's just give people, your webpage, your homepage has too much crap on it. It's because let's give people 50 choices of what they can do. And then, and then we wonder why people don't do the things we want them to do. Well,
right.
Remove it. And I'll give you an example. If you go to jacobsmedia.com, this is our website, and we practice what we preach here. We have one goal, which is to capture your email address, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. If you come to that website, I want your email address. I want you on our email list. And like I said, every day Fred writes a blog post. Every day that is our most visited web page, that day's blog post, right? So I know that is what people are seeing it either in an email blast or on social media or in Google search results or whatever, but they're coming to that post. And so what we do is we have a menu. People can get to wherever they want to in the main menu. But then if you look at everything else on the page, there's probably about 15 links there. All of those links will take you to a page where we will ask for your email address. So as you scroll down, there's an ad within the blog. It is not an ad for some other company. I'm not running ads for Bed Bath & Beyond. It's an ad for something that we have, a webinar recording, a white paper, tech survey results, something that you can download. And you can have whatever that is for free. You just got to give us your email address, right? Sure. So you see that ad in the middle of the web page. If you scroll to the end of the article, you'll see another ad that's the same. If you want to leave a comment on the article, there's a checkbox that says, hey, do you want to sign up for the email list? If you stay on the page long enough, a pop-up window will pop up that says, hey, you seem to like this. Do you want us to email you the blog every morning? And then if you go through the sidebar, the first thing in the sidebar is the About Us page. That is the only link that does not directly ask for an email. Then there's a little window that just says, hey, do you want put your email address in here if you want to get the blog. And then there are a bunch of resources. And again, it's links to those webinar recordings, those white papers, all of which, we are behind a form. So we'll capture your email address. So it's subtle. Like you wouldn't notice this unless I pointed it out, but every link on that page is taking you, and so what you don't see is there are no links sending you to another blog post, for example, right? The point of the blog post is to get you to our website. Once you're on our website, I don't need to send you to another blog post. I need to send you somewhere where you're going to give us your email address, and that's what we do. So,
now, Seth, wait a minute. What do you do with those email addresses? Because if I'm giving you my email address and I'm not signing up for a newsletter,
yes.
What are you doing
so
with
if you're not signing up for a newsletter and it's just important announcements, it is usually webinars for us. It's usually either emails about Tech Survey, and we have three. Tech Survey is our big. It's the radio industry's largest online survey. We've been doing it for, I think, 1 million years at this point. We've been doing it for, I think we're coming up on 2 decades. It's been a long time.
Wow.
And it's allowed us to, what it is radio stations send out a survey to the email listeners in their database, and they answer questions about how they're using new media. And we saw the rise of social media. With Tech Survey, we saw that people were ditching their landlines for cell phones. That's how long it's been around. These days, we're looking at things like the connected car, like podcast listening, like all that kind of stuff. That smart speakers we can see in there. And we've got a commercial radio version, we've got a public radio version, we've got a Christian radio version. So, we will email you to see if you want to participate in that, because that really is the big signature thing that we're known for at Jacobs Media. And when we have a webinar, which is often Tech Survey results, but sometimes I host webinars on digital topics, all kinds of things. That's usually what we use it for. For the last 5 or 6 years, except for one during the pandemic, we've been doing these tours of CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, which is where they launch all the new drones and robots and, all the things that are going to change your life in 5 to 10 years, debut at CES. And we lead radio executives on a tour of that to see what's going to happen. So we'll email people like that, but we'll target those emails too.
Okay, good.
Because when we ask for your email address, it's actually a little bit different. If you're on a desktop, we will ask you to fill out a form, and we'll ask you, what format do you work at? What type of, are you a programmer? Are you on air talent? Are you an engineer? We'll ask you, where you are, things like that. And that's also that we can send you the most relevant emails.
Okay.
If you're on a smartphone, you won't see the same form. If you're on a smartphone, we're just going to ask for your name and your email. And the reason why is because we know that it's a real pain to fill out an entire form on a smartphone. So I would rather have your email address than nothing. I don't want you to abandon that form. And then we'll go back later and we'll email you and say, hey, you should check out this resource. And that's a way of, down the road getting the rest of that information from you.
So a radio station could use this template
Mm-hmm.
for their biggest promotion of the year, perhaps, or...
Sure. So I think one of the things that the radio station needs to figure out to build their email address, there's kind of buckets of content, if you will. There's what we call free and open. And free and open, the job is to get stuff to the website, is to get people to the website. So in our case, that's Fred's blog post that he writes every day. You can read that blog post. You don't need to spend any money, but you also don't need to give us any information. It's just there. You can read it. Then there's what we call freemium. Still free, but behind a form. You have to give us some information to do that. And then there's premium, which you have to pay for, which we don't use. Most people, I don't know if it makes sense for radio stations to use, but, it's like the New York Times does, for example. There's stuff that you have to pay, it's behind a paywall and you have to get to. So that is a model. So part of it is figuring out which of our content is going to be free and open, which of our content is going to be freemium. And maybe, depending on your radio station, it could be different. So a news talk station or a public radio station, maybe they want to say, all right, your first 10 articles, are free and open. And after that, you've got to give us your information. Music radio station, it may be more about contesting. Maybe contests are how you capture people's email addresses. Sometimes, there's different ways of drawing that line. Mark Maron, the podcaster, makes all his most recent podcast episodes available to everybody for free, but older than 6 months, the archives are behind a paywall, right? Or if he wanted, he could make more than 6 months free, but you've got to give up your email address, Sure. So I think thinking about that is which content is there just to get people on the site? Which content are we creating to capture their email address? Which, if any, content are we using to try and, make money off of?
Sure.
And put it in those three buckets and then figure out what's the path. How do we draw people to the website, and move them through each of those stages, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely. So it's you always want to work toward a goal in everything that you're doing online.
And look, this comes back to that idea of homepages have too much crap on it. It's because people just think all the content is of equal weight, and so we'll put it all on the web page, and it's not. There's a path. What do we want people to do? We want people to give us their email address or listen to the station. So how do we lead them through those things and move them along? And again, usually it's about taking stuff away, right? It's about, well, if this doesn't lead them towards the goal, we're going to remove it. It's still there in the main menu. If they want to click on it, they can go find it, but we don't need to advertise it and give it prime real estate and put it right up front.
I see. So a radio station, let's say a top 40 radio station, having that top 40 news on the homepage is not a good thing?
I don't think so. I wouldn't. To be honest, no. I would keep the homepage real simple. I would just, hey, listen now, and here's what you'll hear if you do.
And the reason that I asked that question is that I've always been told that, and what we teach our clients is that you want the homepage to be different every single time a listener goes to it, because they don't want to see the same brochure type homepage every time that they go, because it doesn't look updated. So it's not good for SEO.
It depends on what's bringing them to the site, right? Are they coming through the homepage, or are they coming through a side door? At Jacobs Media, the homepage is not our most viewed page. Most people come to the page through a side door. They come through that day's blog post, sure. Or an older blog post. Radio's a little bit different. A lot of people do come through the homepage, and more so than other industries, because they hear the radio station say the URL, and so they know, okay, I just type in WKRP.com.
Sure.
Or they'll go to Google and type in WKRP or WKRP.com, and Google will immediately send them there. So they will often wind up on that homepage. But again, I don't think you want to detour them from what you want them to do. I think you want to know, what are your goals? I want them to listen. Maybe I want them to enter a contest. So maybe there could be a contest on the homepage that shifts. But I don't, if they want to go to the DJ bios page, I'm not going to stop them, but I'm certainly not going to try and send them there. That doesn't add to our bottom line,
Sure.
right? So, I think being really conscious of that.
This is interesting. I am loving this.
Yeah,
Because
look,
it goes against kind of what I have the kind of like the path that I've kind of worn down over the years, and I all of a sudden want to go create a demo site that just does all of this right here, just to see how it would the response would be.
And look, it is going to be different for different sites, particularly if you are a news talk or a public station. I think it's different. If I went to CNN.com every day and CNN.com looked the exact same, I would stop going to CNN.com, right? Because I'm going there for the new. It's news. I'm going there for the new content. So in that case, yes, I think it matters. I also think that news stations are in a much better position to take advantage of SEO in a lot of ways. I think for a music radio station, it's, SEO is often overlooked, but I think really what people are doing is they're typing in the name of the station for the most part. And so I think that's where it's most important. I don't think, SEO plays quite the same role that it does for a news talk station.
Sure. Man, this has been amazing. I've and just like your blog post every week, there's some sort of aha type moment that I'm going to grab from that.
Well, good.
So thank you for that.
So sure.
Yeah. Hey, Seth, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, and of course, plug this great blog that you have.
So, I'm at Jacobs Media. That's the name of the company, jacobsmedia.com. And if you go, you'll find my blog. It's on digital strategy once a week. I write about digital tips, and I really do try to make them actionable. My hope is that you read this and get the feeling that you're talking about, whether like, oh, I want to do this. This is something that I can do. And you can always shoot me an email. I'm just Seth at jacobsmedia.com, and I love talking to people about digital strategy. And if I can help you out, please let me know in whatever arena that is. If it's email, if it's podcasting, if it's social media, if it's anything I can help with, I am more than happy to help. But thank you for having me on. This is a lot of fun. I enjoy talking about this stuff.
It was so awesome having Seth on the podcast today. Truly insightful blog. If you take away anything from today, be sure that you go and you follow Seth's blog, and be sure that you're getting his posts weekly. So I had the outro. I recorded Seth yesterday, and I had the outro all set to go, and it was done. It was all put to bed. It was all produced, ready to go. And then at 3:30 this morning, I had this epiphany. I woke up out of bed. I'm like, I cannot send that out like that, because while we do agree on how homepages should not be cluttered, we disagree on the proper makeup of a radio station homepage. I mean, the makeup of the homepage really depends on your particular goals, on how you promote your website on air and online, and the kinds of content that your radio station is producing. No two radio station websites are going to be the same, because everybody does things a little bit differently. You have different staffs. You have different ways of doing things on air, different ways of promoting it. One radio station may have several goals in 1 month. They have a lot of contests. They have the newsletter. They have the listen live. And in contrast, another station may not have any goals, or just have the one goal, listening online, and that's it. Hopefully you're going to agree with me that if you have a homepage on your website that only has your logo, your town name, the artist that you play, and a listen live button, that's not going to be an exciting website. That's not going to draw people back to it on a continuous basis. A page like that doesn't give really any reason to return day after day, because it's essentially a brochure, and you want people to spend a lot of time on your website. The amount of time a visitor spends on a website is going to make it better for your search engine optimization. Much like TSL, time spent listening, that's a metric that we measure for on air. The new Google Analytics 4 has these metrics called time on page and average engagement time. So the more time that you can keep visitors on your website, the better your SEO scores are going to be. SEO is important if you want visitors to find your website if they're not listening to the radio station, if they don't follow you on social media, if they don't follow your newsletter, they don't know anything about you. But if they search for local news in your town or radio stations in your town, is your website going to be found? If it's not, or if it's not very up close to the top, then you're not doing something to get the proper search engine optimization on your website. And continuous content on your homepage is going to be a part of that solution. If you have a lot of engagement with your website and you have the metrics to back it up, that website is going to be easily sellable. And it's really all about the revenue. Is your website should be making you money. And analytics is vital in this regard. If you do not have Google Analytics and tracking that information on your website, then you really need to be doing that right now, today. Go out and get it right now. And unless you create content daily and specifically promote each of those items, much like Jacobs Media is doing with Fred's blog every single day, and they're promoting that on social media and so forth and so on, that would be good for a market website. Let's say that your group of stations has a market website, and you're each day you're giving advertising tips and information to help local businesses with their advertising efforts. That's the kind of solution that you would be looking for. That kind of what they're doing there with Jacobs Media. For a radio station, it's going to be a little bit different because you do all kinds of different things at your radio station. You may have a morning segment that does news. You may showcase events throughout the town. You have contests. You may do local news. All of that is great content to put on the website. Everything of content that you're doing on air should be online in some capacity. I mean, I've come across a few station websites where I thought, gosh, that's a lot of clutter on their homepage. But for some reason, they're killing it with all that clutter. And half of that clutter is banner ads. And when you ask them about it, they're like, no, those banner ads are content too, because people want to know in a small market what businesses are having sales and stuff like that. So, like I say, every market is different. So when you hear a solution here, it may work for you and it may not. Test and see what works for you. Some radio stations, they have the magic sauce, and some, they don't have it yet. And that's going to come in over time. So test different things and see what works best for you. If you want help with your radio station website, we'd love to jump in and help you with that. Reach out to us at skyrocketradio.com. Have an awesome week online making your radio station website better. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Better Radio Websites. Remember to subscribe, leave a rating or comment, and share this episode with your team and radio colleagues. For show notes, archived episodes, and more free resources, visit betterradiowebsites.com. Need help starting or making your radio website better? Visit skyrocketradio.com.